What's going on, everybody? This is Parker with Take His Whistle, and after a 1 week absence, we are back with our weekly college football recap and just talk about some good things. So just stay tuned because we got a lot to talk about today.
Oh, come on! Somebody take his whistle!
What's going on, everybody? This is Parker with Take His Whistle, and we are back. Always with me is my great friend, Josh. Josh, how are you today?
What's going on, everybody? I'm doing good, Parker. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing better, especially after the past 2 weeks as far as my football team goes. And I think that is kind of what we're going to start with today. Let's just hop right into this thing. First thing. Actually, no, wait. I'll save it. I'll save it here for a second. Let's just go ahead and talk about Kentucky to forget I said anything. Kentucky, after losing back-to-back games to South Carolina, an ugly game to South Carolina, and a nail-biter against Georgia, which was very low scoring, was not pretty either, but it was just I believe a 1-point loss or 2-point loss, or 1-point loss for Kentucky, 13-12. Finally rebound as their final game of their home stretch ends as they take down the Ohio Bobcats 41-6. The offense finally, I don't want to say it was good by any means, but offense did look better. Obviously, you got to take it with a grain of salt because it was Ohio. But offense did seem like they just receivers were getting quicker, like getting open quicker, creating separations quicker for Brock to hit them. The running game looked pretty solid as well at times. Josh, I'm not sure how much you watched of it because it was a pretty boring blowout game. And I know it was right around the same time that Louisville was playing that you were at that game. So if you did watch any of it, what did you see? What did you like? What did you not like? Just tell me about the game.
So I managed to catch probably like the first half. And for the first half of it, it was, Kentucky was already up 17-0 at halftime. So yeah, it was pretty clear Kentucky was on a different wave this week.
Yeah, for sure.
But one thing I noticed, and also just by looking at the box score, a man that you have probably been the biggest supporter of this entire season, true freshman Jamarian Wilcox. Have yourself a day, young man. 8 carries for 82 yards, averaging 10 yards a carry. He seems a lot like Isaac Brown, the true freshman over on our side of the state. But just an extremely talented true freshman that you just can't keep off the field because they're just so talented. Now, our run game this past week wasn't too great, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, the run game was very successful. Sumo, obviously, he didn't have too great of a rushing day, but he did have 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with, Gavin and Barry and Brown. But, kind of like what you... Oh, one thing I do really want to mention. Dane Key, I think, might have had his best game he's ever had.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
7 receptions, 145 yards to also go with hurdle over a man after making an incredible catch over a guy.
Yeah.
That was an incredible catch and run from Dane Key, and one of his best performances, his best performance in a Kentucky uniform.
I'd say it's either that or last year against Tennessee was that he had a good one that game as well. So this was probably stat for stat. This was probably his best game for sure.
Yeah. And then obviously the defense is always stout. You guys came away with 1 interception. Who else but Maxwell Hairston, of course. But I'll save my question for after. But yeah, just a very good overall general game for you guys. It's good to see you guys get back in the win column. Obviously, competition aside, a win's a win.
Right.
We'll take that. 2-2 on the season. Look to progress again in a tough road game against Ole Miss. Hopefully that game does not go too bad though, because Ole Miss looks pretty good this season. However, they have not played anybody yet. So, look forward to seeing that game.
Yeah, I hate to say this because, last year, anybody that watched the podcast last year, as much as he just never got it together, I still stuck with him week in and week out, was Devin Leary. Like, he struggled tremendously, could not get anything, like, consistently going week by week. He'd have a decent spurts here and there. And, I feel like Brock Vandagriff is definitely on a much longer fuse than Leary is, or at least he should be, just because Leary had all that experience at NC State. Vandagriff really has not had any experience so far. I know he's been at Georgia, which is being at Georgia alone is great experience, but he really hasn't. But last year I stuck with Leary the entire time, and I plan on sticking with Vandagriff this entire year. I think that he does have that raw potential where he can be a very solid quarterback, and on top of that, he just plays with so much heart. Like, you could tell the kid does not want to lose. He does not want to lose, and you got to respect something like that, even if he is doing 1,000 things at once, whether he is just making dumb decisions. He's playing his heart out. He wants to go out there, play. He wants to compete. But, my big but, and if anybody did my fault. That's my fault. If anybody did watch that game, I personally think the offense overall looked much smoother when Gavin Wimsatt was in the game. Just my honest opinion, I felt like Wimsatt had more confidence in the pocket. Obviously, Wimsatt's more of a scrambler than Vandagriff is, but he had much more confidence in the pocket. Whereas Vandagriff kind of like, he gets the ball, he stays there for just a second, and then he runs. He runs out of the pocket and tries to make a play while he's on the run. That just causes for just confusion and mistakes to happen. Wimsatt, who's much more experienced, stays in the pocket, kind of waits a little bit, lets the play develop, and if the pocket collapsed, like we saw a couple times, he would then take off and run. He had nine carries, 25 yards, and a touchdown. But I really do think that, and as much as I hate to say it, the offense looked better with Wimsatt in. Like, overall, it just looked smoother. I felt like even on plays that we did complete with Vandagriff in, the offense kind of looked clunky. It just didn't seem right. Like, something just looked off about the offense still. Even though we put up 41 points, 30-something points offensively, it was still just like what is going on? And a part of that is I think that with the amount of talent that we have in our receiving group, our receivers have to help out Vandagriff. Valid. I feel it. Our receivers have to help out Vandagriff as much as Vandagriff helps out our receivers, right? Like, getting off the line quick, maybe not running as deep as routes where it takes longer to develop, quick little slants, quick little drags, stuff like that is what is going to have to happen for our pass game to work. Because, like I said, Vandagriff is trying to do 1 million things at once, and it's just, he's not there yet. He doesn't have the experience, and that might be why he's trying to do so many things at once, is because he's so inexperienced. He doesn't know how to take the game slow. Defense obviously looked phenomenal, second straight week. I know Brad White is doing everything in his power to keep Kentucky's season alive. And, looking at this point in the season, sitting at 2-2, as much as people were confident that we were going to beat South Carolina, and I hate that I'm even still talking about the South Carolina game, people were confident that we'd beat South Carolina, but I don't think anybody thought it was out of the realm of possibility that we could lose that game. And then at that, nobody really gave us, even Kentucky fans didn't really give us a shot against Georgia. Like, it is very realistic that up until this point, we're 2-2. And that's just, obviously, that's reality. The season's not over by a long shot. I really think that since that South Carolina game, coming out against Georgia and then Ohio, Kentucky has taken massive leaps as a team together. Obviously, the defense was the vocal point, I guess both games, but definitely in the Georgia game. The offense kind of was a lot more involved on Saturday. So, I'm obviously the schedule, the road doesn't get any easier, but still, man, I don't want to give up on this Kentucky team, not this season yet. There is a lot of games, there are a lot of big games left. Like you said, Ole Miss has looked dominant so far this season, but they necessarily haven't really played anybody besides Wake Forest. I think if Kentucky comes out and their defense plays competitive, they can. I'm not saying, I don't want to say they'll win by any means. I don't want to say that. But I think Kentucky can make it competitive like they did Georgia. I think they can make life hard on this high-powered Ole Miss offense. So, I mean, and that's all it takes is, right? We just got to keep it close. Hope maybe Ole Miss makes a mistake and Kentucky can capitalize on it. Unlike even though Georgia made mistakes and we didn't capitalize on those. But, I mean, I think that's the recipe to a win. And if we can somehow, some way, pull off an upset win, I mean, we're the sky's the limit, right? The sky is the limit if we can somehow win in the first ever road game this year. So yeah, overall I'm definitely still optimistic. I don't want to give up on this team. I don't want to give up Mark Stoops just yet. There's so many games still left to be played, but yeah, that's my rant about Kentucky. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, okay, so we look ahead schedule-wise. You guys have Ole Miss at Ole Miss this week. Again, like I said, looking forward to that game. It's a noon kickoff, so early one there. And then the game after that, you guys got a home game against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt coming to town to play Kentucky. That is a very interesting game to me because Vanderbilt is a team that I have not yet figured out. They are 2-2 on the season, but in one of those losses, they looked like good old Vanderbilt. In the other one,
Southern.
Yeah, was it Georgia?
I think it was.
Did they lose to Georgia? Georgia State. They lost to Georgia State.
That's even worse.
Which is even worse. But in the other games, they beat Virginia Tech in a very close game. They blow out Alcorn State. They shut them out. And then this past week, they take number 11, Missouri, who actually dropped in the rankings after beating Vanderbilt. They took number 7, Missouri, down to the wire in overtime, and unfortunately their kicker shanked a game-tying field goal to take it to overtime 2, wide left, which is just a routine kick that you can't miss there. No. But Vanderbilt is a team that I've not been able to figure out whatsoever. But if I'm being completely honest with you, Parker, I don't think Vanderbilt's offense has an answer for Kentucky's defense. Mm-hmm. I think your defense is way too high-powered and way too aggressive for that Vanderbilt high-powered rushing offense because their pass game's not that great. It's really the scrambling ability of Diego Pavia and everyone else who rushes on that team because I feel like that's all they do is just run the ball over and over and over again. Right. And I don't think that's going to beat Kentucky. I don't think that's enough to beat Kentucky. So I do see you guys winning that game. You got Florida at the Swamp, which, again, is a tough game. Florida
You don't know what Florida's going to bring.
Yeah, you don't know what Florida's going to bring. You really don't. And so in Florida, like Vanderbilt, is 2-2, and they're a team that, again, I sit here and I think to myself, what even is Florida? Are they really, really bad? Are they mid?
Solid, yeah.
Are they solid? Because they got destroyed by Texas A&M at the Swamp. They got destroyed by Miami at the Swamp. But then they go out and destroy Mississippi State, who, if we're being completely honest, is probably the worst team in the SEC this year. And then they blew out Samford. So they have UCF and they have Tennessee before they play Kentucky. Now, that's a pretty rough 2-game stretch before they get to Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you go against the number 5 team in the nation who could be even better by the point they play Florida, and that's at Tennessee. So I don't see Tennessee dropping that game. But Florida, again, that's a tough game. Always. It's always going to be a tough game at the Swamp. Now, this game is a game that I really wanted to
biggest
put
of the year, for sure.
It's a game that I really wanted to put an eyeglass on, and that is when Auburn comes to Kentucky, because Auburn, other than Mississippi State, Auburn has looked like the second worst team in the SEC. Auburn does not look good this year whatsoever. They did not look good against Arkansas. At home, for the record. They already lost to Cal, so they're 2-2 on the season as well. I feel like every goddamn SEC team is 2-2 this year right now.
Pretty much.
But Auburn, Auburn has so much talent on that team. They have one of the best true freshman wide receivers in the country in Cam Coleman. They have another true freshman wide receiver who's really solid in his own right that I can't think of his name right now, unfortunately. I apologize. But their quarterback play is just so god-awful. Peyton Thorne is not a good quarterback. And for a team like Auburn and for a coach like Hugh Freeze, I don't know how you go to the portal in this offseason and you come out with Peyton Thorne. I don't know how that's the guy you wind up coming out of the portal with out of all the quarterbacks that ended up in the portal. Because Peyton Thorne is not good. He is not him. And if he's the quarterback for that game, again, I struggle to see a way Auburn's offense can beat Kentucky. And I don't think Auburn's defense is very good either. So that's a very good game to keep your eyes on for Kentucky, because at this point in the season, I feel like that is a must-win for Kentucky. It is a must-win for Kentucky, actually. I changed my mind. That the Auburn at Kentucky game is a must-win game.
Everyone said the South Carolina game was a must-win, and I guess up until that point, I guess you could say it was a must-win, but no. Auburn, Kentucky is a must-win. Must-win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, emphasis.
And then from there, you have probably the second rough stint of your schedule. Obviously, you throw Murray State in there, but you have to go to number 5 Tennessee, to number 1 Texas, and then obviously Louisville comes to town November 30th. But it's a hit or miss schedule, Parker, and
it's rough.
Right now, if I had to predict to you guys, I'm putting you guys at 6-6. I'm putting you guys at 6-6 right now. Sorry, 7-5, because I've said this. I've said this before, and I'm gonna keep saying it until it happens. I can't say we're gonna beat you guys. So I'm gonna say Kentucky beats Louisville today, even though we're looking good, even though we're ranked in the top 15. It hasn't happened in 5 years, so I can't say that we're gonna win. So right now, if I had to look at the schedule right now and predict the rest of the season, I'm putting you guys at 7-5, which is bowl eligible. And for some people, that's good enough to keep Mark Stoops around, which that's a whole nother conversation that we don't have to have today. But
I want to touch on that just for a second, because I mean, if Kentucky goes 7-5, that means 4 of those losses are from, at this point right now, all top 6 teams.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I understand. 7-5 is, besides South Carolina, obviously. I understand 7-5 is not what you want, and it feels like we've been 7-5 for the past 10 years.
But when you look at the teams that make up the 5, though,
exactly,
it looks really damn good. And you know what? To stack up onto that, if it becomes 6-6 and Louisville does pull off the win at Kroger,
top 15. So.
That win's probably going to look good, because I'm sure Louisville will still, be somewhere in the rankings by that point. So I'm sure that loss will look, or win. I'm sure that loss or win will look good. But yeah, it's not bad losses by any means, but I guess when you look more into the thick and thin of it, in a conference like the SEC, if you're stagnant like the way that Kentucky's been for years, at a certain point you want to see progression. You want to see more wins, and I can understand that point of view from fans, but at the same time, it's really hard when you're in the SEC, because kids constantly want to go to schools like Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, and now Texas and Oklahoma. So you're competing against all these top-tier, S-tier schools for these recruits. And Kentucky's no slouch when it comes to recruiting by any means. I'm pretty sure you guys have a top 25 class right now in the 2025 class.
I think we're sitting at 23 right now.
Yeah, so Kentucky's no slouch in recruiting by any means, or the transfer portal. So the talent's there. We're seeing it. We're seeing the talent in the defense that you guys have. You guys have a top defense in the SEC. And I mean that. You guys have a top-tier defense in the SEC, maybe even the nation. But the offense is, we haven't seen enough from the offense to say that seen enough from the offense to say that the team is balanced enough to progress, to make those progressions. And I think that is what would come from a coaching change or just something different. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I get what you're saying when you say that the losses are to top tier teams and you can't really do anything about that. I get that, but you can only move up one way, and that's by changing something. And at this point, it feels like maybe it might be a coaching change.
I understand that. I do understand that. But and this is probably going to rile up some Kentucky fans by me saying this, because I feel like this has been an excuse for, it feels like, a couple years now. And it can all change overnight. Everything, like this whole roster can be taken apart overnight. Overall, we have a very young roster. A very young roster. Especially offensively. Like, specifically offensively. I mean, you got Vandegrift, who's a junior. So, I mean, at this rate, we're going to have him one more year. Berrien, Dankey, Jamori Macklin, all juniors, right? And then, obviously, the defense, like, you got Deion Walker, who's probably going to leave after this year. Same with Maxwell.
He's gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, him and Maxwell are probably gone. Hopefully Maxwell, I feel like Maxwell's got a little bit more persuasion. We could potentially get him to come back for his senior year, but still, I don't necessarily see it right now, especially if Kentucky does kind of struggle this year. But overall, Kentucky does have a young roster, and a part of me is like, let Stoops rock with this group. As soon as, like, every once in a while, I feel like every team has, like, that 1 year where, like, team's just full of seniors, and everyone's gone, and they kind of have to rebuild from there. Unless you're like Louisville and with Jeff Brom and you just reset every single year. I want to give Stoops kind of just like, I kind of want to give Stoops this year or next year. This year or next year. I mean, if he can, and like I said, everything can change overnight, right? With the transfer portal, and Macklin, he, and Brown can all be gone within an hour with the portal now. Vandegrift could go to fucking Charlotte, right? Like, so much can change with the portal and NIL and all that stuff. But if he is able to retain everybody or as much talent as possible, let's let him rock. Let's let him rock with a full year. That's practically the same offense 2 years in a row, minus the running back. Which, I mean, if Sumo comes back, it'll be pretty much the same exact offense as we're seeing right now. Let's just rock. I mean, personally, I want to rock with Stoops until after next year. Obviously, I guess I should say unless Kentucky somehow has 4 wins this year, then there's something definitely to be talked about. But again, I think that each week we've also seen improvement, and who knows what this team looks like come the Louisville game, right? Like, who knows what type of offense that is. Maybe something finally clicks. Like, we've seen that in teams all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so the last question I have for you about Kentucky, and this is just kind of your personal opinion, but it's something that I've noticed, and it's kind of like I don't want to say worrying, but I guess for like you or me, it might be potentially worrying. But a player that I feel like has flown under the radar this year, or maybe not living up to the standards, or maybe not living up to the hype that a lot of people held for him before the season, Berrien Brown. I'm not sure if maybe it just takes him a while to like get into the swing of things, or if he's just not, or if he's just not good. But you know, he doesn't have 100 yards on the season yet. He does have 2 touchdowns, which is nice. But as in general, when you look at it in general, he doesn't seem to be. He seems to be wide receiver 3 behind Dane Key and Jamori Macklin right now.
I genuinely think it's simply just because the defense has sent the house on him, right? Like they completely just like he's not getting any free room at all. And obviously Berrien is electric fast, and he should be able to get open just from speed alone. But I think the clamps are so tight on him, and that's why we see like Dane Key have his best game, is because arguably like the third string cornerback is guarding Dane Key right now because everybody else is focusing on Barian Brown, and also I think that it's, I mean, the whole offense. I mean, take away Dane Key's performance this past week. I mean, what has Dane Key done? You know, like Dane Key, I guess he had the best game against Georgia. He was our best receiver against Georgia as well. But I mean, it still wasn't anything to like, oh, well, Dane Key's having a pretty good year until this Ohio game. I really,
well, I guess you could technically say that about the receiving room as a whole, because you guys have mainly been a running team so far to this point.
And that does it does definitely worry me. To answer your question, yes, it is worrisome because, I mean, I think going into this season, Barian Brown was a projected top receiver in the SEC. Probably, I mean, depending on the year he did have, was probably going to the NFL next year. If he's like the offense doesn't get it together and Vandagriff and Brown don't really get that connection, and his draft stock just absolutely tanks, why the hell would you stay at Kentucky? You know, like why? Like what is keeping you to stay at Kentucky? Like obviously the pass game is a wreck there. Your goal is to make the NFL. That is worrisome. That if the Barian Brown continues to just like slowly decline and like get less and less involved in the offense, whether it is because of just the offense's scheme in general, not passing the ball and not being able to get the pass game down, or if it's just because everyone is sending whatever at him, the kitchen sink at Barian Brown, I would transfer. I would definitely transfer for sure. And so that is worrisome for sure. And I could say that about the entire receiving room though, right? If we don't understand that, but we don't get the pass game, all three of those guys, Key, Brown, and Macklin, could be gone like that. And it sucks because, like I said, they are so young, and there is a good chance at this point in the season that we have all three of them back for their senior year, which would be pretty awesome.
Well, I don't want to throw this into your head, Parker, because I know how much of a Barian Brown fan you are, but what would really suck is if you entered the transfer portal and went back home, and I'm sure you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, you know, the only reason I do know that is because in my Kentucky Dynasty on College Football 25, that is exactly what happened.
That's exactly what he did?
That is exactly what he did. He entered the portal after my first year and went to Tennessee.
Yeah, that would be so. That would
suck.
That would be worst case scenario to be
I would hope, for some reason, I think he's from, I don't know exactly where he is for Tennessee. I don't want to say that because I don't want to be wrong. Hopefully he goes to Vanderbilt.
I'm pretty sure he's from like Nashville, the Nashville area.
Yeah, let's go. I hope he goes to Vanderbilt if he does leave. He would be a stud at Vanderbilt.
That would be an insane decision.
I would love it though. I would love it.
You'd buy a Barian Brown Vandy jersey.
I would 100%. 100%. I already have the polo in the closet.
Yeah. But all right.
Anyways, moving on. Before we talk about Louisville, I do want to keep it with SEC just for a second, and I want to ask you a question because we kind of we didn't necessarily have a back and forth, but we did kind of have a back and forth. Obviously, the new rankings came out, but my question is: should Tennessee be number 2 in the nation right now? Or I should say, is Tennessee the second best team in the nation?
Well, they're not.
I know rankings-wise they're not. They're not ranking-wise. But I'm just, overall, what you have seen so far, has Tennessee not looked like the best or the second best or the best?
I mean, you know what? It's really tough because when I think about it, the Tennessee offense has looked really good, but up until Oklahoma, they haven't played anybody. Mm-hmm. You can say NC State all you want. NC State is garbage. NC State is so bad. The hype they got in the offseason, I said it on here. I told Parker in private. The hype that NC State got in the offseason is ridiculous. But they beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma by 10, and that score is very deceiving, by the way, because Tennessee controlled that game for the entire – yeah. But for some reason, Tennessee also looked like they didn't want to score.
I was going to say, only scoring, not even scoring a touchdown in the second half.
Yeah, like it's the score is very deceiving, but they controlled that game. Like the Oklahoma couldn't do anything on offense or defense.
Jackson Arnold was horrible.
Yeah, and Jackson Arnold is
got benched.
Now, actually, he's benched now, so they're now starting their true freshman against Arkansas. No, sorry. Tennessee plays Arkansas. I don't know who they play next week. But to answer your question, no, because I honestly think 5 is a good ranking for them. Maybe 4. Maybe switch to maybe you can switch to them in Alabama, because, and the only reason I say that is because I genuinely believe that if they played Texas, Georgia, or Ohio State today, I think Tennessee would lose. I think Tennessee would lose. Yeah, because just you throw in the combination of not really playing anybody yet, and also when you really look at it, they're a young team. They're a very
young team.
And I know going to Oklahoma is always a hard thing to do. And yes, they're in the SEC. I'm convinced. I'm convinced they are a very good team. Tennessee is a very good team. If you are a Volunteer fan listening to me speak right now, you guys are a very good team. You guys are a national championship contender. All right, please don't get mad at me. But I struggle to sit here and say that they would beat Alabama convincingly, or Georgia convincingly, or Texas convincingly. You know, you get what I'm going at here?
No, I understand.
Because as a whole, when you look at the other teams, Ohio State hasn't struggled once in any game they've played in. Ohio State hasn't struggled once. Ohio State has looked like a top 5 team, top 2 team, top 3 team. Georgia has struggled. They've very publicly known struggled against Kentucky last week. However, every other game they've played, Georgia has not struggled at all. Texas has not struggled at all on offense or defense.
No matter who the quarterback is.
Yes, exactly. All 3 of those teams have looked flawless in their efforts to thus point. Now, Alabama is the only team that I would consider maybe swapping around with Tennessee, because Alabama struggled with USF for the entire game until the fourth quarter. Tennessee has not struggled with anybody. So that is where I would flip it around and maybe say put Tennessee at 4, Alabama at 5, if you're going to make any ranking switch. But no, I do not have a problem with Tennessee being at 5. I don't think they're the best team in the country as of right now. I think the voters have it right now as far as the top 3 goes.
So let me ask you this. Yeah, another question. Bigger game this week, Alabama, Georgia, or in 3 weeks from now, Alabama, Tennessee?
Well, I would have to say Alabama, Georgia, because that's happening now. You know what I mean? Like the whatever Alabama, Tennessee becomes in 2 weeks is a direct result of whatever happens this week with Alabama, Georgia. You get what I'm saying?
That's fair.
Like if Alabama beats Georgia, then the Alabama Tennessee game becomes significantly bigger. But if Alabama loses to Georgia, then yes, the Tennessee Alabama game is still massively huge, but it like very slimly loses a bit of its shine because Alabama now has a loss. I don't know who Tennessee plays in the next 2 weeks, but Tennessee probably has no losses.
Tennessee pretty much, now that I look at it, and obviously now that they beat Oklahoma, Tennessee has they kind of, I don't know. It's hard to call it. Tennessee has an easier schedule.
They actually, you're right. They do kind of have an easier schedule, but
they play Bama and then they play Georgia as well.
They get Alabama at home. That's very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. That is very interesting to me.
The SEC, I think there's definitely a cutoff of like the elite teams in the SEC, and as of right now, we haven't seen anything from Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss has looked good, but I haven't really seen anything from Ole Miss just yet that has made them like put them in that elite category with the other 4. But at least those top 4 teams, it is going to get interesting because it really seems like everyone plays each other.
What really sucks too is Ole Miss's schedule is really easy too. like they really don't play anybody either. Like they
Ole Miss
get
sneak
you guys
in
at
there.
home. They get you guys at home, which they could win. They have to go to South Carolina, which we've already seen is a hard game in itself, going to South Carolina. But at the same time, South Carolina threw that game completely away against LSU. So who knows how they're going to look against Ole Miss. But for the sake of this argument, let's go ahead and chalk that up as a win. So now they're sitting at 6-0, going to LSU, going to Death Valley Part 2. Probably the better Death Valley, if you ask me. But LSU doesn't look great, and they just lost their best defensive player for the year in Harold Perkins. So Garrett Nussmeier doesn't look great. So Ole Miss probably wins that game too. Then they play Oklahoma at home. We already know Oklahoma's not that great. Oklahoma's defense is really good, but if their offense can't put up points, then what's it even matter?
Right.
And then they have Arkansas, and then they have Georgia, which that game could be pretty fun. That could be a pretty interesting game. That's at Ole Miss. So, but yeah,
it's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, Ole Miss doesn't really have too hard of a schedule in their own right either. But the top of the SEC right now is so like, it's like you said, it's a cutoff. It's like the 5 teams that are there, and then like maybe a little jump, and then you can like kind of toss in like Missouri. And then it's like the rest.
I forgot about Missouri.
And then it's like the rest. I'm not willing to put Missouri up here with the other guys. Missouri's kind of,
especially what they did this past week.
Yeah, Missouri's kind of in their own little thing, like right here. They're still figuring out what they're good at. But yeah, the SEC is the SEC is a bit of a battle this year. Maybe a bit more than I thought. Because I personally, to be honest, the only team that I was really high on was Georgia this season, which is kind of a gimme answer.
And now it looks like, Georgia's not even the best team in the SEC now.
Yeah, now there's like 5 or 6 teams that I can look at and be like, well, they could end up in Atlanta, But yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And I hope Kentucky can potentially spoil one of them where it doesn't even matter. I would love that if Kentucky, because Kentucky has to play like all of those top teams.
Yeah,
you guys have of those top teams.
Yeah, you already played one of them. You almost spoiled one of them. You gotta play one coming up this week at Ole Miss.
We play everybody but Bama.
Yeah. Then you get a few weeks, and then you gotta catch Tennessee and Texas. But okay.
Anyways,
that was 40 minutes about SEC ball. Let's get into some maybe less entertaining ball and talk some ACC.
Well, I would not say it was entertaining because Louisville had themselves a very entertaining game, very back and forth. A first real competition for Louisville as the already five games played Georgia Tech team. So very battle-tested Georgia Tech team. And I think I even told you that before that. I was like, the one thing Georgia Tech does have on Louisville, because I think Louisville was going into the game was more talented, probably better coached. The only thing that Georgia Tech had was that they have kind of already been through it. They obviously, it looked a lot better a couple weeks ago, but they beat Florida State, lost to Syracuse, and I forgot who else they've kind of won and lost against. But
they beat Florida State. Did you say that?
Yeah. So they looked real good after week 0. They looked like a legit team after week 0, but then we found out that Florida State is ACC contender.
They're in the ACC.
Yeah, they're a football team, maybe. But anyway, Louisville
got their first one.
They did.
We'll talk about it.
A very close game goes down to the wire, even though the score doesn't necessarily look like it. It was much closer than the final score was. Louisville, special teams and defense pretty much won you all the game. As much as, I don't want to come out and say that I was straight rooting for Louisville, but I was at work and I was watching it on my phone, and I'm not gonna lie, I got hyped jumping up and down whenever Louisville blocked that field goal and returned it for a touchdown, because I don't know, it was just an awesome moment. But Louisville coming up huge.
That's just a cool play.
It's
just a cool thing to happen. That doesn't happen.
Anybody that does that, I'm going to get up and down for. So, But yeah, no, Louisville definitely came up clutch defensively, special teams wise, to get this win. Josh, obviously you were at that game. I was not. Very questionable calls from the referees the entire game. Louisville's offensive line did look pretty messy at times. Now that could have been because the refs kind of had a narrative that game, or maybe it was just Louisville's offensive line did look messy. But they, at the end of the day, they did what they did last year in close games. They found a way to win, and it looks like they're continuing to do that. Josh, what did you see from the game? And I guess just tell me, I guess, like what your main points about that game is, and then we'll kind of really dissect that game.
Yeah, well, my first main point, you kind of already touched on it, but listen, you can say it's excuses all you want. You can come at me all you want, but those refs absolutely were doing everything in their power to give Georgia Tech that game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll admit it as a Kentucky fan, 100%. Louisville was playing
the penalties. We only had one more penalty than Georgia Tech, but the consistency of the penalties, like how often they were happening, were coming at a way faster rate for Louisville. And we also, like, our penalties also gave up way more yardage than their penalties did. But, I'm not going to sit here and say that all the penalties weren't deserved. We had plenty of holding calls. That is something that the O-line has to work on. You can't get called for holding every other play. That's just not something that can happen. But we contained, other than his one 20-yard rushing touchdown that he had, we contained Haynes King exceptionally well. He had 14 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown, but like I said, one of those, a big chunk of those yardage was from the 30-yard touchdown run he had at the very beginning of the game. After that, we contained him very well. We stopped the run very good, which is a big thing for me.
Especially on fourth down.
Yeah, especially on fourth down, because Jamal Haynes is one of the best running backs in the ACC, and we held him to 25 yards, which when he scored earlier in the game to tie it up 7-7, he actually threw probably one of the best-looking L's downs I've ever seen as a celebration. That turned out good for you, didn't it, buddy? But yeah,
nobody can throw L's down besides Kentucky. Let's make that clear right now. For any other team that plays Louisville, you guys do not have the right to throw down L's down. The only team that has the right to do that, even if they win or lose, is Kentucky.
It's really weird to see them do that too, because they came out of the tunnel throwing L's down. Georgia Tech came out of the tunnel throwing L's down, which is very weird because other ACC teams don't really do that. Kentucky really is the only other team that does that. But Georgia Tech was on one this game, I guess. They remembered last year, what happened last year when they fumbled that game away too.
They fumbled that one hard.
I mean, yeah, but it was a tough battle. We had to beat Georgia Tech and the refs. You and me said that literally immediately after the game. Right. But, Tyler Shuck had a good game. He didn't throw very much. Our offense didn't actually do much at all, if I'm being completely honest with you. You said it. Our defense won us that game. Tyler Shuck, 13 for 19, 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. What I will say is, to this point in the season, Tyler Shuck looks like him. He has no turnovers, and he has, I think, 6 touchdown passes on the year.
Unless you count that safety. Wouldn't that safety be a turnover technically? I don't know if that is considered a turnover or not.
I don't know if it's considered a turnover. If it
no
is,
interceptions.
yeah,
No interceptions.
It's still no interceptions on the season. And he's performing very well. And he's staying healthy, which is obviously very good.
Key. Yeah, that's main.
Yeah. So, and as long as he's healthy, I think he keeps us at a very solid state. Couple key things that I want to say. Run game has to be better against better competition like that.
But we kind of knew that going into the season. I know Louisville was kind of spoiled their first 2 games because they kind of just did whatever they wanted to in the run game. But I think going into the season, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the big worry point it was the run game going into this year.
For
right?
sure. But, I don't want to put too much weight on that one because Georgia Tech's rush defense is actually really good this year. They actually have a really good rush defense. Their pass defense is actually what sucks. Their rush defense is actually really good, though. And then speaking of the pass defense, the next point I want to make is two receivers. Two receivers had great games. Ja'Cory Brooks and Chris Bell both respectively had outstanding games. Both had touchdowns. Chris Bell had 2 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Most of that yardage came from like a 50-yard reception touchdown that he had where he caught the ball, immediately broke the tackle, and then just outran the other 2 guys for the touchdown. And then Ja'Cory Brooks, I mean, like...
Alabama fans are pissed.
Yeah. Well... You'd think so, but a lot of them are actually really supportive of him. Every time I feel like every time I see
they're pissed that they're just not playing. He's not playing.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know. I'd be pretty happy if my replacement for Ja'Cory Brooks was Ryan Williams because Ryan Williams is him. Fair enough. Ja'Cory Brooks 4 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Ja'Cory Brooks had probably one of the most viral moments from this past weekend. Ja'Cory Brooks had a touchdown pass where the DB grabbed him, turned him around, made him do a full 360, and Ja'Cory Brooks,
somehow caught that ball.
After fully spinning and doing a full 360 and ending up looking at his own sideline, somehow turned back around to track the ball, which was already almost at his face, caught it, and still took it in for a receiving touchdown, which... Talk about playing through the whistle, because the DB on that play, after he committed the defensive pass interference, just kind of forgot how to play football, I guess, and just gave up. No whistle was heard yet, and he just kind of gave up, allowed Ja'Cory Brooks to just catch the ball and waltz into the end zone.
I definitely don't, like, I would never have, like, obviously I don't play football, but I would not have gave up on the play, but even, like, watching it on TV, it looked like I didn't know Brooks had the ball in the first place, but it also seemed like
neither did the stadium. The stadium did not know he caught that until he was
in the end zone.
Until he was in the end zone, the stadium did not know he had caught that ball.
But I also thought that Brooks got pushed out of bounds. Like, I thought the play was, like, done. Like, I thought the ball was, like, just on the ground somewhere. Like, I had no idea. And so I guess I can't necessarily, like, put too much blame on the quarterback because me watching it at home, I didn't even know that Brooks had the ball. But still, you gotta play through the whistle.
Mm-hmm. And then there is one more specific thing about this game that I want to mention, other than the fact that, it was a good win, a good defensive win. Defense performed very well. I hope that they can keep it up because we have a very tough game this upcoming week. Maybe. Depends on how you view the opponents. But one thing I want to talk about is Tyler Shuck's deep ball is one of the most impressive deep balls that I've seen from a quarterback in a Louisville jersey in a while. Like, maybe since Teddy. But Tyler Shuck, he threw a deep ball all the way down the field to our tight end, Jamari Johnson, who was in triple coverage. He threw a pass to Jamari Johnson in triple coverage and somehow still throw it perfectly to where none of the to where none of the DBs could get a hand on it, and it went right into Jamari Johnson's chest. Now, unfortunately, Jamari Johnson couldn't hold on to it, and it dropped. But that was one of the most beautiful balls I've ever seen in my life. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, the DBs literally, like, there was no shot they could get a hand on it. Like, it was just perfectly placed right into Jamari Johnson's chest. But Tyler Shuck looks really good. Defense looks solid. I want to say one more thing before we get into, like, the weeds of, like, our next opponent and everything, that we did with Kentucky. For the people that don't like Ron English, which is our defensive coordinator, for the people that are saying, like, oh, he sucks, fire him, whatever, what won us this game?
Defense, especially, for sure.
Who stepped up when we needed them to step up?
Defense, 100%.
So I don't want to hear about firing Ron English when he coached our defense well enough to get the stops where it mattered most. Talking about the fourth line stop at the goal line where they very easily could have scored, and that happened multiple times. The special teams plays and just overall like solid defensive. Like, sure, we give up a few passes in the middle of the field sometimes. I get it. Like, that sucks. They get a couple first downs here and there because we leave a guy wide open in the middle of the field. But all in all, where, like, at what point are we saying to, like, that we're hating on Ron English? Like, we have a top defense in the ACC. We have one of the best defenses, depending on who you ask. Our defense is very highly touted nationally. So it just doesn't make sense to me when I hear some Louisville fans say that they want to fire Ron English, because he's a very good defensive coordinator. And our defense, like I said, they step up when it matters most. So I don't really get that argument, but people are entitled to their own opinion. So
I do want to say, other than the players kind of like, or I guess like Georgia Tech or just opponents in general having open players in the middle of the field, what is that the legit only reason that people are saying that in the first place? Because all in all, Louisville held Georgia Tech to technically 14 points, right? They had a field goal, which is good on the defense for bending but not breaking, making Georgia Tech kick a field goal. And the other 2 points came from the safety, which had nothing to do with the defense.
yeah.
So all in all, Louisville really only let up 14 points defensively. And, I mean, is 14 points to Georgia Tech enough to get a man fired? I don't feel like
No,
that
not at all. It's the little things. It's just the little things that people are annoyed with, like said players just being wide open in the middle of the field, or like the rare like chunk plays that other teams get against us. Like, there were a couple throws that Haynes King made down the field where they got like 50 yards off of a catch, which were very well defended passes. Like we had a DB on the receivers. The receivers just made good. They had good hands. Like, you can't do anything about a receiver that knows how to catch a ball.
Right.
But it's just the little things. Like, it's not actually just the grand scheme of our defense, because the grand scheme of our defense is actually really, really fucking good. But yeah, it's just the little things.
I mean, I feel like, and this is just completely on the outside looking in, the offense looked much worse than the defense did Saturday, in my honest opinion. Because I told you this. I told you this, and it could have just been the flow of the game. It really felt like Louisville was like big time play or nothing at all, right? Like it felt like Louisville was only moving the ball by Shuck throwing the ball 20 plus yards downfield, or maybe it's a shorter throw, but a receiver breaking it off for a longer run. Louisville never really dissected Georgia Tech's defense. It was like run on first down, run on second down, both for like a yard or two, and then Shuck launching it downfield. That's what I kind of got from it as far as Louisville's offense goes. And obviously, like, it worked out. And I think I said it yesterday to you and Caleb. It was like, it's like that basketball team that lives and dies by the three ball, right? Whenever it's on, it's unstoppable. No one can beat them. But that one time that they cannot pull that off, they cannot hit the three ball, Louisville cannot make those big plays, what are they going to do? Because it looked like they kind of just struggled with 5 to 10 yard passes, and just that alone. Like, I mean, obviously, like, again, if you can get a 50-yard Ja'Cory Brooks touchdown every single play, you're going to do it, right? But we didn't see Louisville like kind of like break down Georgia Tech's defense, in my opinion. And so I overall, I really feel like the defense played better than the offense did Saturday.
They definitely did. The defense definitely played better than the offense. But at the same time, the offense wasn't really on the field that much. Our defense played a lot of that game. I mean, we had two defensive touchdowns that game. The blocked field goal and then the fumble recovery in the end zone. We got outgained in every single aspect of that game, yardage-wise. Like, they had more total yards, they had more passing yards, more rushing yards. The only thing they didn't have more than us was yards per play.
Which makes sense, because
which makes sense. But we only, we punted twice that game. So It was really more of a thing of just our offense not really being on the field too much. Or,
and that's what I said. It could have just been the flow of the game.
Yeah. It was 100% just the flow of the game. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to complain about. We're still 3-0. The defense looked fine. They looked good. They looked great even. So now it's just on to Notre Dame.
And I think that tells a lot.
Yeah.
If Louisville goes into South Bend and Notre Dame hangs 40 points on their head, then I think that could open up which, I mean, it's still, obviously I'm from the outside looking and I don't know the ins and outs of Louisville and stuff like that, but if Notre Dame hungs 40 points on them, then I feel like that would be a more reasonable time to open a decision about getting rid of your defensive coordinator. Giving up 19 points to Georgia Tech does not. Especially really the first game of the year for Louisville. You expect, very rarely do teams sit there and their first real game of the year go out and look flawless, right? There's gonna be ups and downs, and this was really Louisville's first test of the year. Mm-hmm. So I mean this Notre Dame game is massive.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because even if Louisville does lose, they still have everything in the world to play for with the loss. But I mean, this is going to be a telltale sign of what I think the season is to come, is this Notre Dame game.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, which that's a really good segue to, I guess, our next segment, which we can talk about this game. We can get into the weeds a little bit about this game and then the ACC as a grand conference like we did with the SEC, if you'd like. But this Saturday, September 28th, 3:30 p.m., specifically on Peacock, or elsewhere, really? If you catch my drift. It's exclusively on Peacock.
Interesting.
But number 15 Louisville travels to South Bend to play number 16 Notre Dame. Louisville surpassed Notre Dame in the AP poll after this weekend. Parker, give me your thoughts first.
Well, Notre Dame has just not been impressive at all this year, point blank. I mean, obviously with the loss to Northern Illinois, which looks a lot worse now because Northern Illinois followed it up with a loss to Buffalo this past weekend. I really thought Notre Dame might have figured it out after the Texas A&M game. You go into A&M, first game of the year, and you come out with a win. You lose to Northern Illinois. Yeah, you put it on Purdue, but, I mean, Purdue's not a good team at all this year. And then Miami, Ohio, the same thing. It was different, but the same thing kind of happened. Through one quarter, Notre Dame was losing. It was 3-0 after one quarter against Miami of Ohio. I have not been impressed with Notre Dame one bit. I was curious going into the season because I thought Riley Leonard. I was already, I guess, had questions about Riley Leonard. Obviously, he had a good season for Duke standards, but I don't know if he necessarily had a good quarterback season overall, especially enough to warrant QB1 at Notre Dame. And so far, he really has not been producing, in my opinion. Obviously, Jeremiah Love is a stud. The receiving core is not impressive at all. Defense can be good when they want to be good. It's going to be a dogfight regardless. I don't see a world where Notre Dame nor Louisville goes in and just dominates start to finish. I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight till the very end. Similar to what we saw this past week for Louisville. Right? It might be a 2-score game at the end of the game, but it's going to be a score that's not going to tell the story of the game. If you ask me right now, I am personally giving the edge to Notre Dame because, I mean, we saw them get up for the A&M game. They got up against a really good opponent. They have played down to their opponents other than that, besides Purdue. Louisville, again, not as battle-tested as Louisville. Or not as battle-tested as Notre Dame. Louisville looked sloppy at times. They looked solid. Their defense looked solid against a bad Notre Dame offense. Could benefit Louisville. But overall, being at Notre Dame, being out South Bend, I personally am going to give the edge to Notre Dame in this game. And on top of that, I'm sure Notre Dame, it's the same thing with Georgia Tech last year. I'm sure Notre Dame is like, no, we're going to get our get back. We're getting our get back on Louisville for storming the field on us last year, which is an awesome moment, right? I think that's going to be played in the back of some of these Notre Dame players' heads, coaches' heads, fans' heads, all of that. So, yeah, that's my honest take. I'm going to give the slight edge right now. And on top of that, you told me that Louisville had a few key injuries as well that could end up playing a factor, especially the big one if Quincy Riley does not play. That could be absolutely massive. I know you said it was a game-time decision, if I'm right.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So, you lose that. You said that you had a receiver that tore his ACL. Jaden Thompson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, two key injuries, especially the depth of the wide receiver room, because you don't know if Colin Lacey's going to play. It could be a somewhat shorthanded Louisville team going into South Bend. And so that's my take on it. I give the slight edge to Notre Dame right now.
Yeah. I'm just going to kind of echo everything you said. You know, the offense does not look good. The offense can't really produce anything, like damn near at all. Riley Leonard doesn't look impressive. How many games have they played? 4 or 5? How many games have they played?
4, I believe.
4. They're 4 games into the season, and Riley Leonard's only thrown 1 passing touchdown. He's thrown 2 interceptions.
That's crazy.
He's ran the ball more than he's passed the ball.
That's insane.
I don't know if that's like a scheme thing that they're doing with him, but he's not a great passer this year. And I mean, if you ask me, if we can contain him running the ball, our rush defense is pretty damn solid. If we can stop the run, which I believe we can, I mean, we already stopped Haynes King, who's probably the best rushing quarterback in the ACC. If you could stop Riley Leonard from running the ball every play, and if you can stop Jeremiah Love, who's also really good in his own right, I mean, I struggle to find where we struggle in this game. But then when I look at the other side of Notre Dame's team, their defense is really stout. They have a really good defense. Their defense is able to keep them in these games. Obviously, the defense didn't look too great against NIU, but against everybody else they've played, the defenses look really good. You know, the Texas A&M game was a battle of defense. This game this past week, the offense didn't really do much. It was really the defense. But it's tough because I feel like we have a good offense going against a good defense, and then we have a bad offense going against a good defense. So in my own head right now, I'm like battling to figure out where the points are going to come from, because it might just be a game of field goals and who can get more of them.
Been there, done that already this year.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see. But as far as my prediction goes, I know you took Notre Dame, Parker, but this Notre Dame team just does not seem impressive to me. And I mean, I don't know what it is about Riley Leonard. I mean, genuinely, I feel like this team would be better off with Sam Hartman from last year as their quarterback this year. But I'm gonna take Louisville, going to South Bend and getting the job done against Notre Dame. But obviously, you could say that's a homer pick. But at the same time, I haven't seen I haven't seen anything from Notre Dame like at all.
I think this is, you can flip a coin and whatever it lands on is like, you can make a very solid argument whoever you pick.
Yeah, and I mean, Riley Leonard's the team's second leading rusher behind Jeremiah Love by only like 30 yards. Like this guy's running the ball like 15 times a game. Like he's damn near a second running back out there. So it's strange how they're using him, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess. And if we can contain the run really good, I feel like we really wouldn't have a hard time shutting that team down.
Right. No, I totally agree with you on that. Do you think that, I mean, how much do you have a factor, do you think, playing at South Bend is going to play in it? Because last year, being at the Notre Dame game last year at Louisville, it really felt like Notre Dame was rattled by the crowd at Louisville. Like, it really seemed like, obviously, Sam Hartman, his history with Louisville is not good. But it really seemed like last year the crowd played a major factor. Do you think the crowd at South Bend plays a factor? Because this is their first real game, home game, this year for them.
Yeah.
I know they lost to Northern Illinois, but still.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about track record? Riley Leonard doesn't have a good track record against Louisville either.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to say that. Last year, I don't count just because he was hurt in that game.
Yeah, he was hurt in that game, yeah. So I give him kind of a little bit of leeway in that game as well. But, yes, it's always going to play a factor. It's South Bend. South Bend's one of the, top 10 hardest places to play in the country. And they're gonna pack that place out.
For sure.
The team is going to come ready to play. Like you said, they want that revenge. The fans want that revenge. Because I mean, Louisville practically ruined their season last year by beating them. So Notre Dame is definitely feeling that one still, and they're definitely going to want that one back. But
and also on top of that, talk about ruining seasons. If Louisville does win, Notre Dame season's over.
Yeah. If Louisville wins again this year, if they win back-to-back years, they're gonna destroy Notre Dame's season yet again. Personally, I feel like Louisville fans are gonna travel really well for this game.
I do too.
I already know like plenty of people that are going to this game. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of red there. But it's going to be loud. It's going to be loud for Notre Dame as well. And not to mention it's a green out for them too. So this is a special game for them.
Is Notre Dame wearing the green unis?
Yeah. They announced it. They announced it like months ago that this game was going to be a green out for them.
That's pretty cool.
So
for people that don't know, my second favorite team is Notre Dame. I will say that my second overall favorite team is Notre Dame. So it's a family thing. I got a couple family members that are big Notre Dame fans. So it is kind of like I don't want to root against Louisville because I really don't have a dog in this fight, and there's no reason to root against Louisville if Kentucky's not playing against them. But also at the same time, it is Notre Dame. So
yeah, but I think we're gonna see a lot of red there. But I think Notre Dame is going to show out for it. I think they're going to be loud. I think it's going to be tough because, again, it's South Bend. It's going to be loud regardless. But we can only wait and see. You know what I mean? I really wish it was a night game because that would be sick. But unfortunately, it's not. So, it is what it is. But
I just feel like there hasn't been I feel like all the good games so far have just not been night games. No, besides Kentucky, Georgia.
As of right now, it looks like Louisville might only have one night game this year. So,
what is that?
Louisville at Boston College.
Oh, the Friday game?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That might be our only night game.
The Miami game's not. The Miami game's not gonna be a night game.
Well, you go look at that slate that week and tell me if you think that's gonna be a night game.
Still, man, I wanted that to be a night game for sure.
I mean, who knows? It could be. If Louisville goes into that undefeated and Miami goes into that undefeated, you're probably looking at maybe a top 5 ranked Miami versus a maybe top 12 ranked Louisville, maybe more.
Right.
So
yeah, maybe.
You never know. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. We got a fun slate coming up.
Right. Well, we're already at over an hour, which is crazy because I feel like we have not been talking for an hour. Yeah, I know. I guess let's wrap this thing up with our predictions.
Good old predictions.
And I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to do it this year, but I've done it this year. I did not tally up, I guess, 2 weeks ago's thing. So
Shame.
Next week, I promise on my soul, that I will have everything for the 3 out of the 4 weeks that we have done predictions. I will have that tallied up. If anybody cares, Josh, this is mainly just something that we just do competitive against each other. But if anybody does cares, I will have it tallied up for everybody.
Alrighty, Parker. The time has come. As you know the rules. We're going to do the top 25 games only because it would be a pain in the ass to go through the entirety of college football. So we're going to start here with Virginia Tech at Miami.
Miami. Virginia Tech has just looked so unimpressed, so disappointing this year. And Miami has looked the exact opposite. Miami looks like they're on a different level so far. So I think Miami comfortably wins this game.
Yeah, I'm going to take Miami as well. It's a night game. I don't know how that's a night game and Louisville Notre
it's a
Dame's
Friday
not.
game.
But then I was like, oh, it's a Friday game. That's
Yeah.
what I said. But okay, so we both got Miami. By the way, just out of context, we had technical difficulties. So when it cuts back to that, what we just said, just know we had technical difficulties. Yeah. So that's why it kind of picked up at a weird spot. But all right, next game here, we've got freshly ranked BYU at Baylor.
I mean, I got to take Baylor. I'm sorry. I got to take BYU. I know Baylor played Colorado pretty good, but I don't know how much that means. I mean, BYU, dude, though, like, I never saw that coming in a million years. The way they manhandled Kansas State, like, I was so shocked about that. So, yeah, I'm definitely taking BYU.
Yeah, I'm also taking BYU because, like you said, they manhandled Kansas State. Like, it was not close at all. And
No.
Avery Johnson looked not good that game.
I don't know what that was.
But BYU oddly looks, like, really good. Like, they looked really good.
They look solid.
Next up, we've got Oklahoma State at Kansas State.
And, well, I mean, right on cue. I mean, these two teams have looked so bad,
They've both looked so mid.
I mean, this is not a this is a game. Even though it's a ranked versus ranked, and it could mean a lot come the end of the season. This exact game, I don't care to watch this game at all. I am gonna go with Kansas State just because Oklahoma State doesn't have a freaking quarterback at all, and Ollie Gordon just does not look good at all so far this season for some reason. So I'm taking Kansas State on this one.
Yeah, so I was actually hoping you would take Oklahoma State because I was going to take Kansas State. But, yeah, I'm going to take Kansas State at home to bounce back from the loss against BYU. Like you said, Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman, 10th-year senior or whatever he is, he doesn't look good still. He's been in college for 7 years, still hasn't figured out how to be a good college quarterback. And then Ollie Gordon, like you said, just not the same Ollie Gordon from last year. Like, I don't really know what happened there, but it is what it is, I guess.
Right.
All right, next up, we've got Minnesota traveling to the Big House to take on Michigan.
Michigan with a really big win this past week. Surprised me for sure. I know it was at the Big House as well, but I thought it was going to be all USC in that game as well. I don't really know too much about Minnesota. I think Michigan really handles this one fairly easy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Michigan as well. Let's see here. All right, next up we have got Kentucky traveling to Ole Miss to take on Ole Miss.
I want to take Ole Miss to win, but I am going to smash the under on the over-under on that game. And I really might take Kentucky to beat the spread on that game, actually. I think Kentucky could. I think Ole Miss is favored by 17.5. And I think it could be that low scoring of a game
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I find that to be so crazy considering how closely you guys played Georgia and the fact that Ole Miss hasn't played anybody. Like, I find it so crazy to think that spread is as big as it is, but it is what it is, I guess.
So I'm taking Ole Miss to win it, but I'm definitely smashing the under, and I'm probably smashing Kentucky to beat the spread.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I'm gonna take Ole Miss, but I genuinely I wouldn't be surprised if come fourth quarter and it's actually a really close game, low scoring too.
No, it's definitely gonna be low. I don't see this point. I don't see it being a high scoring game at all.
Yeah,
for either team.
But I'm gonna take Ole Miss, and mainly because it's at Ole Miss. If it was at Kentucky, you could convince me.
That is a good man. That is a good man because there's not many people out there like you right now.
But okay, so next up we got Arkansas at Texas A&M. I'm going A&M.
Hear me out. I'm going Arkansas. Arkansas, as bad as Auburn looked last week, Arkansas made some plays. Taylor Green looked okay at times. I'm taking Arkansas here for sure. I know it's a daunting task playing at College Station in College Station. A&M hasn't really impressed me too much this year, so I'm gonna take Arkansas to pull off the upset here.
Listen, I'm gonna take A&M because one, that defense is incredible, and the true freshman that goes by the name of Marcel Reed at Texas A&M after they benched Connor Wigman's bum ass. Marcel Reed is incredible. Like, I don't know how they let that kid sit on the bench against Notre Dame and not play him at all, because Marcel Reed has looked great, and he is the reason that they are still ranked.
I totally agree.
But and it's at College Station, so
major factor in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like College Station. Yeah, it's at Kyle Field, and I feel like Aggie fans are hyped that Marcel Reed is their quarterback right now. So I feel like they're gonna show out.
Fair. That's fair. But
next up, we've got the very much anticipated Louisville at South Bend going up against the Fighting Irish.
I mean, I'm not gonna take back what I said earlier. I'm giving the slight edge to Notre Dame on this one. I'm taking Notre Dame.
I'm also not gonna take back what I said. I'm gonna go with Louisville. Gonna be a homer here.
No, hey, like I said, you cannot you can't pick. I don't think you can pick a wrong one in this game. You have a valid argument for either one, in my opinion.
Alrighty. Next up, we've got Wisconsin traveling to South California. Taking on the Trojans.
USC bounces back big time, especially. Is Tyler Van Dyke even playing? Is he done for the year?
I don't actually know.
I haven't heard anything since he went down with a nasty injury against Bama.
Yeah, so, I don't think so. I think
Wisconsin's in shambles.
He is done. He is done for the season.
He's done for the year. Yeah. Wisconsin's in shambles. USC's pissed off. They're gonna bounce back big time.
I'm going USC as well. Next up, we've got Oklahoma traveling to Auburn.
Same thing, I think. I know it's at Auburn, and crazy stuff happens at Auburn all the time. But
I think Auburn's so bad.
Back. Yeah. I'm taking Oklahoma in this one.
Auburn is starting a new quarterback this game, but so is Oklahoma. So that's gonna be interesting, I guess.
That is very intriguing.
Two new quarterbacks,
first time starters,
and I think they're both true freshmen. There's a lot of true freshmen that are getting thrown into the starting spots this year.
Oh yeah, because that's the thing with the transfer portal. You go all in on some of these transfers and they just don't pan out.
Yeah.
In whatever system you have, and you're just like, oh shit. Well, I threw all my chips in on this guy working, so we're gonna have to throw the.
Well, Jackson or Oklahoma's quarterback. What's his name?
The Jackson Arnold or
Jackson Arnold. He's not a transfer. He's been there for a couple years. He's just not good.
That is true. Yeah,
he was a 5-star recruit.
Yeah, well, so was Brock Vandagriff. So
yeah, fair enough, I guess. Next up, we've got Mississippi State at Texas, and we're both going to take Texas.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Stanford at Clemson.
Except Stanford. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as good as Stanford did look against Syracuse, I'm going to take Clemson here because it's at Death Valley. And also, Clemson looks pretty good.
Stanford has really hung into some games this year. They hung into TCU, hung in with Syracuse. So,
they have, but Stanford hasn't played anybody as good as Clemson. And
definitely. I'm taking Clemson for sure.
And Clemson's defense is still, top tier.
Yeah.
If anybody can shut down Ayo Manor, it's Clemson.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay, next up, we've got Iowa State at Houston.
Iowa State, for sure.
Yeah,
I don't really know too much about Houston. I don't think Houston's very good this year.
Houston is not good.
Oh, they got shut out by Cincinnati last week.
Yeah.
I'm taking Iowa State for sure.
I'm also taking Iowa State. All right. Ohio State at Michigan State.
Ohio State.
Same here. All right. We've got the big one here, Parker. We've got Georgia traveling to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide.
Real quick, I saw something that really surprised me. Alabama is actually the underdog in this game, going into this game. And it's the first time they've been the home team and been the underdog, like played at Alabama and been the underdog since 2007 was the last time that happened. I don't know who they played and if they won that game or not, but still, just in 2007 is pretty crazy.
That's wild.
I feel like we've seen more cracks in Georgia than we have Alabama. I think Alabama has kind of exceeded expectations so far this season with DeBoer, and I'm not gonna hide it. I'm a fan of Jalen Milroe. I like his game. I like the way he plays. I mean, it's very Lamar Jackson-esque in my opinion. He's not as elusive as Lamar Jackson, but similar tendencies. So I'm gonna take Bama in this one. I think Bama takes it.
I really don't know who to pick. Like, genuinely, I really don't know who to pick. The family in me is telling me to pick the Tide because I know if my cousins see this, they're gonna be angry at me. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm taking Bama. I'm taking Bama too.
Taking Bama.
I feel like this is a much more even game than people are giving Bama credit for.
For sure.
And the fact that Georgia struggled that deeply against Kentucky really worries me.
I mean, it definitely. I think they're. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It definitely could have been a one-off, and they're definitely still a top 5 team in the country. But, I mean, you already know Brian Denny's going to be packed, like, to the brim.
Oh, dude, yeah.
The brim. Like, that place is going to be sold out like no other. And it's going to be close. Like, honestly, like, if you want to flip a coin for Louisville Notre Dame, like, you could flip a coin for this game. I'm gonna take Bama.
I really feel like so far, I have not been very impressed with Georgia's offense at all.
Yeah,
and
that's
I can
what
say the exact opposite for Alabama because I actually really have been impressed, especially what they did to Wisconsin. Now, is Wisconsin just not that good? Maybe, but it's still Wisconsin at Wisconsin, and they put up 40 plus points on Wisconsin. I've been impressed. They've definitely exceeded expectations in my opinion. Their offense has, as far as Alabama goes, and the exact opposite for Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're both taking Bama there. This next one's really interesting to me too. We've got Illinois traveling to Penn State to take on the Nittany Lions.
This is an interesting. What do you have to say about this one, real quick? I'll let you go first on this one.
So Penn State looks really good this year. They struggled in that Bowling Green game, but other than that, they really haven't struggled at all. And they're coming off of a bye week, if I'm not mistaken. No, they're not. They're not. But Illinois also, like, there's so many Big Ten teams that are just coming out of nowhere this year, and Illinois is one of them.
For sure.
Illinois has already beaten Kansas, who everyone was saying is a Big 12 contender this year.
Which they look horrible.
Yeah, which Kansas looks horrible. Illinois beat Nebraska in overtime, which Nebraska still, even though they lost to Illinois, Nebraska still looks good. But I don't think I can go against Penn State at Penn State. If this was at Illinois, I think I could maybe take Illinois. But the fact that it's at Penn State, I don't see Penn State dropping this one. And Drew Adler's looked really good this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you. I'm picking Penn State as well. Although, like you said, Illinois has kind of been spoiling teams.
Yeah, but me picking Penn State here isn't to say that Illinois is a bad team. Illinois is a really good fucking football team this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Luke Altmaier's a really good QB this year.
It will be interesting to see because, I mean, I guess you could say West Virginia was Penn State's first real competition if you want to. But really, in my opinion, this is Penn State's first true test. And I mean, are they going to continue just to be the little brother in the Big Ten that just can't really get to the top, or is this a legitimate year for them?
Which
Well,
I feel like Illinois has been waiting for this for a while, because Illinois has had so many like defensive prospects come from their defensive line and their DB room into the NFL in recent years. Like, they've been waiting for a year like this, and they finally got it, and they look really good. But okay, next up, I think this is going to be a unanimous one, but we've got South Alabama going to Death Valley to take on LSU.
South Alabama did look good against App State, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yeah, LSU rolls.
Yeah, I'm going LSU as well. This next one's interesting because they're both undefeated, I think.
No, Boise State.
But we've got Washington.
They lost to Oregon.
Barely. But we've got Washington State going to Boise State to take on the Broncos.
I think Boise State rolls pretty heavily in this one.
I am gonna go Boise State as well.
Yeah, I mean, Aston G&T is insane.
Insane, different level.
Yeah, I think Boise State rolls. I think they really put themselves on the map.
Yeah,
it's definitely not going to be as bad as the JMU North Carolina game was. But I think they're going to put themselves on a map as like the legit group of 5 contender.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next two I feel like we might just pick the same team, but the next one we've got Arizona at Utah.
Hear me out.
Which I don't think Utah is the 10th ranked best team in the nation, by the way.
No,
they should be lower.
I'm taking Arizona.
Okay, I'm taking Utah. Even without Cam Rising, I think they still. I'm not impressed with Arizona. Arizona's looked not good this year.
I randomly found myself on Twitter in a Utah fan thread the other day. If you don't follow me on Twitter, Mulhall, at Mulhall Parker. But it really seems like that fan base altogether is over Cam Rising. Like, they're just so tired of him.
He's hurt
getting hurt
every other game.
Every single week, yeah. And so, I mean, I do think that Arizona has some talented players on that team. They have some especially offensively. And I think that it could be enough where we could see, I mean, Arizona did it a couple times last year. They upset some big teams last year. I think Cam Rising playing or not playing could be the difference in that game. And, I mean, as of right now, who knows if Cam Rising plays, but I'm actually going to take Arizona to pull off a top 10 upset against a team that you said you don't think is top 10. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think Utah's ranked too high, but it is what it is. Yeah, I'm going Utah just because I don't like Arizona this year. I don't know what's going on, but I don't know. I don't know. Next up, we've got Oregon at UCLA, which
I'm going Oregon for sure.
I'm going Oregon because UCLA doesn't look good this year either.
And that'll do it. This is really just the first. This is really the first weekend that is like gonna be pretty insane. Like, we have a shit ton of really good matchups and very intriguing matchups, and it really only just continues from this week on. I'm super excited for this week, whether Kentucky wins or loses. Still, I'm just gonna wake up, watch Kentucky, switch right over to Louisville, and then in the night with Georgia, Alabama sounds like a phenomenal Saturday in my opinion. And probably the same for you, Josh. But any closing statements for yourself?
Well, my mother's birthday is this weekend, so I'm going to try to watch as many games.
Josh.
I'm going to try to watch as many games as I can while celebrating her birthday. I'm definitely going to try to catch that, or not even try. I'm going to watch that Georgia-Alabama game.
Sure.
Just because I have to. Well, I'm definitely going to try to catch that one as well, but I'm literally, like, when that game starts, I will be 30 minutes into the birthday celebration already. So that's
so sickening. I'm not gonna lie.
It's sickening. It hurts a lot, but I gotta celebrate the mama. So
no, for sure, definitely.
But that's gonna do it from us here at Take His Whistle. I have been Josh. That has been Parker, and we appreciate you guys for sitting through this long episode with us. And we will see you guys next Tuesday. Peace.
Roll Tide.